Welcome to South Coast Working, the voice of working people and those who continue to build the South Coast each and every day. From the docks to the mills to the classrooms to the roadways, working people add a voice and life to southeastern Massachusetts. Brought to you by the UMass Dartmouth Arnold M. Dubin Labor Education Center.
Welcome to the South Coast Working Podcast. I'm Elena Eberwine. On this episode, we're looking at the special collaboration last year between the College of Visual Performing Arts and the Labor Education Center at UMass Dartmouth. The Labor Ed Center serves as a bridge between students and communities. It thrives most when faculty are hungry to connect students and to collaborate. This episode focuses on just one example of such a collaboration between the Labor Ed Center and a faculty member. Gabo Camnitzer was an assistant professor of art and community-based practices at the College of Visual and Performing Arts at UMass Dartmouth. He taught a class called Art as Action. In the spring of 2023, the cohort learned about the rich history of labor on the South Coast in collaboration with the Labor Education Center. They then were tasked with using their skills and talents to create something for the community. I spoke with Gabo and the group of his former students about this type of collaboration and learning, and how many of them went from knowing very little about the labor movement to wanting to start a union of their own. Let's get into it. Gabo, who I'm going to call him Gabo because his students do as well, he said class started off with getting to know each other. Most students in the class came from the College of Visual and Performing Arts, but some were from outside of the department, taking this class as an elective for their marine biology or business degrees.
We're doing some sort of like exercises, finding shared interests, shared concerns, things like that. Also do some kind of like basic asset mapping, seeing, the skills we have in the room, the knowledges that we have in the room, and so forth. And usually for like the first month or so, we focus on that, and then we slowly transition into just
Because the class had the unique opportunity to collaborate with the Labor Education Center, Gabo assigned readings early on to give an introduction to the labor movement.
we read like Howard Zinn and some other sort of historical accounts of like labor organizing in Massachusetts in the 19th century, early 20th century.
This also included reading about local labor movements. The students read articles about the blue harvest fisheries and its impact on local fishing boats in New Bedford. Gabo also brought in organizer and artist Brian Tillett to talk about his experiences. Early on, students gave presentations on working class history events that occurred on their birthdays as a way to learn about underappreciated historical events. They also had to make an artwork based on the event, using the medium of their choice. Some made poems, illustrations, ceramic sculptures. Even if they'd never done art before, they were learning an important lesson.
So like the purpose of the class is to establish like art as one form of cultural practice, and that like all cultural practices are like our processes of like navigating and making sense of the world, having an incredible influence on like how things might change, how we feel in the world, like how we could feel otherwise.
During the class, the students also had the chance to meet with the dean of the college. They were able to have what Gabo described as a mini town hall to ask questions about the changes they want to see on campus. Many of the students hadn't met the dean before. What Gabo didn't anticipate?
I didn't foresee the extent to which they would like sort of like, grasp it with both hands and like run with it. In that particular iteration of the class, like a faction of students like in the class like really were like chomping at the bit to like do something, to like have an intervention, and like I let that sort of like guide the trajectory, and that's how like the WorkedUP group formed, was just like students being like, why don't we have a union?
Camilo Viveros with the Labor Education Center emphasized how Gabo's teaching style intentionally facilitated the space where students could grapple openly with how they could voice their concerns and share their skills to connect to local labor union members. I talked with some of those students, the ones who were chomping at the bit. They described what they started to feel as they learned and the class progressed. The semester was moving, but they still hadn't decided what their end goal was. What they didn't realize was that they had the collective power.
But it was actually in our hands, and we just weren't aware of it from the beginning.
Kato was a student in this cohort. Here's Steven, another student from that group.
It just kind of like snowballed into all of us being like, all right, well, now we have to do something. We've been talking about unions. Why don't we try to like do our own little union thing? And we'll showcase like union history along with like what we were trying to do. We kind of settled on, we're doing this union thing. We threw out a lot of different names and ideas, and we ended up settling on WorkedUP.
With that, they were off. Utilizing their unique skill sets, they began organizing and planning a final exhibit at the New Bedford Art Museum. For many, it was their first time organizing like this. Here's Sarah, another student who participated in the class.
I think like one of my favorite parts was like setting up the groups, like figuring out who's doing this and who's doing that, and then like having little group discussions amongst other groups. That was really cool.
Quinn, who was also a part of this class, said it felt like some sort of experiment.
In which the adult steps back and he's like, figure it out.
Let's see what they do.
Yeah, let's see what they do. And let's see how they work with each other and how, you know, if they come across a problem, how they're relying on each other and fostering that community to solve it, which is a super important skill to learn that I don't think everyone realized he was teaching us, because it's super applicable to the real world.
Which was a huge part of what Gabo said he hoped the students would take away from this type of learning and teaching.
I feel like a lot of education is more based on preparing people for the workforce than actually like preparing them to be like fully formed like social agents. So in the class, like I really tried to reframe the purpose of education and have it be more focused on them seeing each other as like resources and seeing each other as their sort of like most important allies.
They were learning how to organize by doing it. Some were tasked with creating a logo for WorkedUp, some made posters, others began to visualize what the exhibit would look like. The group also put together a survey for students and faculty. They received over 200 responses.
With all the surveys, we were just gathering all these people's like gripes and like issues like that. Like,
I think it definitely helped that we were students advocating for students. They're feeling the same way that we're feeling. So I feel like that added that also connection to them to be like, okay, yeah, we can trust them because they're just like us. They're going through the same things just like us.
And we ended up making like a big poster or banner showcasing all these quotes from the submissions that we got.
And much like the labor movement,
with WorkedUp, we want to kind of give people a voice. We want to be able to like project this for people.
Students in the class looked at the parallel between workers' rights and student rights, and how labor unions organize for social and economic impact in parallel with how arts can be used for positive social change. The students then had a chance to interview community members with labor ties through the Labor Education Center. Students spoke to workers on the South Coast from a wide variety of sectors and different backgrounds, including healthcare, wastewater treatment, education, the postal service, and factory work, just to name a few. The project came together in an audio compilation of oral histories, giving voice to workers.
In the class Art is Action at UMass D this semester, we have been looking at the parallels between workers' rights and students' rights, and how artistic strategies can serve both.
I have a long history of involvement with unions directly or indirectly.
Well, when I was really young, I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player, but that didn't work out for me.
I've been at the post office for about 10 years.
I am a licensed electrician.
I'm a 30-year member of the Teamsters.
I think from working in that environment for a whole, it's not so much. I actually learned to appreciate, a nice sunny day more.
What is an emotion you often feel when working at your job?
Tired is an answer.
I think that counts. I think you have a pretty long day.
Why do they do all these things? Because that's people power, and they don't want that. They want to keep us like feeling we should be so happy that we work for them.
From the union side of it, I saw a lot of change, and I was able to create a lot of change.
In these interviews, union members also took the time to share with students about the union difference. Here is Jim Snow, a longtime member of the Painters Union and a labor leader at the AFL-CIO and the Labor Education Center.
Well, I think there are probably a couple of, signature benefits. One is that you are able to negotiate your wages, hours, and working conditions with the employer, who otherwise would set them by himself or herself, not always to your satisfaction. And the second is just the mutual protection. There's protection in a union from arbitrary treatment by employers,
Right.
and by the action of the economy in a lot of cases where the economic situation will harm your relationship to the employer with your employment itself and with the existence of the employer even. So
Right.
there are a lot of protective aspects of union membership that also are extremely important.
The students also spoke with Howard Payne.
What do you see as the importance of unions?
Well, I think collective bargaining, like they just changed the policy for management. They took away a lot of their sick days. They took away, other things. So they can basically do whatever they want to their employees. Now, sure, you can go to another job or go to another, go from job to job, and that's fine. Maybe if you're younger, you want to better yourself, and sometimes you need to go to another job for an opportunity to better yourself. But people who stay at the same job for a long time and they're loyal to the company, there's a benefit with having a defined benefit, like a pension, because it lasts forever. 401ks are good. I'm in a 401k as well, but that's called a defined contribution program. So you can have that, but a defined benefit will give you a paycheck for life after you retire. And another benefit that the union has, in our union, we have early retiree health insurance. So if you retire early, you can retire early depending on how many years you work there, and if the pension works out well for you, you can stay on the union insurance until you're eligible for a Medicare, which is 65. So there's a lot of benefits, especially for older people that have worked their whole lives. And some of them, I have a coworker that's been there since 1979. So that's quite a commitment, So he's going to have a nice pension for him and his family, and he's going to have health insurance. He's retiring at 64, so he can stay on the union health insurance for a year until he is eligible for Medicare. So, people can retire early, and, a lot of these jobs are very physical, and they're always they're raising the retirement age. They're always doing that, and some of these jobs, people can't stay, till their late 60s or 70s. There's a lot of guys, I've been fortunate enough to keep myself healthy, but there's a lot of guys that I work with that they're in rough shape, you know what I mean? And, some of them don't make it to retirement. I just had a guy last year, 4 months older than me, have a heart attack and just drop dead right on the job, So, they don't make it to retirement. So, if you can retire at a reasonable age and live with dignity, have, a paycheck with your Social Security and stuff, and have health insurance and have all that stuff. So unions, I think, are important, because they provide that for their members, where companies, fall short a little bit in that regard.
These oral histories were a big part of their project and had an impact on how they view workers' rights.
I feel like too many occupations kind of treat people as machines and don't realize that we also have our own lives and our limits and faults behind the scenes, and sometimes people expect things to be at a consistent, steady pace, when reality is no, we need breaks.
The students also gathered historical news clippings, made a short documentary-style video, and displayed the survey results on a gigantic vinyl banner.
Big high wall there that tried to stop me.
The full multimedia exhibition came together in a beautiful celebration of local labor movements, art, and history. While the momentum of WorkedUP has fizzled out a bit since, the class and experience has left students with long-lasting takeaways. For Sarah, she's taking away
a really strong, love for organizing, and doing that kind of thing. And, I want to keep doing that kind of thing. That's my biggest takeaway.
I feel like one of the biggest things that I got from this was just, how important a sense of community can be. So it's together we can actually make it happen. But if we don't actually band together, nothing happens.
Union work and banding people together to sort of create that commonality to fix a goal or to fix a problem that is affecting everyone or affecting, sections of your community that might not affect you, but it's your peers, your neighbors, your friends, your family. Union work is not all sunshine and rainbows, and it's ugly, and it's grueling, and it's a lot of work. And so something my biggest takeaway from doing a project at this scale that blew up bigger than I thought it was going to when I entered the class is, this is something that society deals with a lot. If a group of people want to take something and bring it to completion and make it much bigger than they had intended for it to be, or that they could have ever imagined it to be, there has to be that driving force behind it, and realizing once the excitement dies down, there's still work to be done. There's still conversations to be had. We still need to meet with people. We still need to keep in contact with each other. And so I'm not saying that WorkedUP is dead, but I'm saying that it's definitely dormant right now. And ultimately, if having this podcast is what brings it back up on its feet, that's great. But that's up to us to ultimately put it back into motion.
My thing was obviously one of the biggest hurdles we were going through was wondering how big we can go and stuff, because a lot of people are oh, if this is a project, we gotta limit ourselves and stuff. I think this can apply to anything. Do as much as you can, and if you don't try to be more, if you don't try to do more, then you won't be more than what you are now. And I feel like Gabo and that class really helped us push to see how far we can go. And now that we know that we can go this far, who's not to say that we can't go farther? And I don't think it matters what level you do it, whether it's just sending a post, making an art project, talking to people, making a meeting. It doesn't have to be a consistent big giant union that you're on 24/7. It can just be just advocating as much as you can, because many hands make light work. And I think as long as you you cause a chain reaction, that will build up to something greater. And that I think that's something that I feel if you're scared or to do, you just keep that in mind and not let that stop you.
That was profound. Bro, spitting bars. Yeah.
Or I haven't said this out loud before, and I don't know if I should, but for me, I think about the class, since there's so little institutional memory here from the student's position, I'm hoping that the class, just because it is this allotted time, this allotted space, allows a forum for there to be that kind of institutional memory. And so even though WorkedUP didn't necessarily continue as WorkedUP as a group, I feel the knowledge that they gained, was passed on to the next group, and the current iteration is informed by the last one. And that, so even if there isn't a traditional student union, at least this is a space where we can have those tough conversations about the material conditions that we're all experiencing.
Gabo left UMass Dartmouth after this past summer, but his impact on students and ability to empower them is something they will continue to carry wherever they go.
Gabo, we love you. I hope your cats are doing well.
For real. Send pics of the cats, bro.
For now, I'm Elena Eberwine. A special thank you to Gabo and his former students for making the time to discuss their experiences. To learn more about the Labor Education Center and to get involved, reach out. You can also contact the Labor Education Center if you want to listen to all of the student worker interviews. We'd love to hear from you.
Oh my God, shout out to Gabo getting the blow up rats from New York.